For the last few months, my marriage felt less like a relationship and more like a quiet corporate downsizing. No announcement, no dramatic meeting in a glass conference room. Just small things disappearing one by one until you look around and realize your desk is already gone. Erin didn't become cruel. I almost wish she had. Cruelty is loud. Cruelty leaves evidence. You can point at it and say, "There, that's the problem." What she became was efficient. The house stayed clean. Dinner happened on time. Conversations were trimmed down to the emotional length of a grocery receipt. "How was work?" I'd ask. "Fine." "Busy?" "Yeah." End of transcript. Roll credits. At first I tried to fix it the normal, socially approved way. Flowers. Her favorite takeout. Suggesting we watch something together like two emotionally functional adults in a commercial for scented candles. She'd smile politely, the way you smile at a neighbor's dog that keeps bringing you a wet tennis ball. "Maybe later," she'd say. Later became a fictional place. I'm pretty sure it lives next door to honesty and permanent happiness. Then came the tiredness. Not normal tired. Not the kind that follows a long day or a bad night of sleep. This was selective tiredness. Precise. Strategic. Too tired to talk. Too tired to sit close on the couch. Too tired for anything that required us to remember we were still married. But never too tired for her phone. The phone had full access. Unlimited conversation. Late-night glowing attention under the blankets, like a small private universe I wasn't invited to orbit. I tried not to read into it. People scroll. People text. People disappear into screens because the world is exhausting, and pixels are easier than honesty. Still, something felt rehearsed, like I was watching a play where I hadn't been given the updated script. Physical distance came next, and it arrived so gently it almost felt reasonable. One night in the kitchen, I brushed my hand lightly against her waist as I walked past. Not romantic, not demanding, just the quiet language of people who share a life. She stiffened, not violently, just enough. "Can you not?" she murmured. 3 words, soft voice, surgical precision. I stepped back like I'd touched something hot. "Sorry," I said automatically, even though I wasn't sure what rule I had broken. "It's just been a long day," she added, already turning away. Long days started happening a lot. Long days, early mornings, sudden plans, vague explanations wrapped in calm tones that discouraged follow-up questions. And here's the strange part. Nothing she did was clearly wrong. No fights, no accusations, no obvious betrayal you could circle in red marker. Just absence. Carefully measured absence. It's amazing how loud silence becomes when it lives with you. I stopped initiating conversations, not out of anger, out of curiosity. I wanted to see what would happen if I removed effort from the equation. The answer was simple. Nothing happened. Days passed smoothly, politely, like 2 respectful roommates who once shared a different life but misplaced the instructions on how to return to it. That realization should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it made something inside me very still. The evening before she left felt sharper than the others. Not louder, just clearer. Like the air before a storm that hasn't decided whether it wants to destroy you or simply pass by and let you keep guessing. She came home later than usual, heels tapping across the floor in quick, irritated rhythms. Keys dropped into the bowl without looking. A sigh that didn't belong to any specific problem. "Hey," I said from the couch. "Hey," she answered, already halfway down the hallway. No pause, no glance, just movement. A few minutes later, she came back into the living room pulling a suitcase behind her. Not a small bag, not an overnight thing, a real suitcase, the kind that quietly announces distance. I watched it roll across the floor. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "Work trip," she said, kneeling to unzip it. "When did you find out?" "Today." Of course. Clothes folded with mechanical precision. No hesitation in her hands. No emotion in her face, just efficiency, like she was completing a task she'd already rehearsed somewhere else. "How long?" I asked. "Couple of days." "Where?" "Out of town." Answers that revealed nothing while technically answering the question. A talent I hadn't realized she'd mastered. I leaned back slightly. "I can drive you in the morning." That's when she finally looked at me. Her expression wasn't angry, wasn't sad, just firm, closed, finished. "No," she said. I waited a second. "No? I'll handle it." "It's just a ride," I said quietly. "Not a life commitment." I said I'll handle it. Silence settled between us, thin and cold. Then she added, almost casually, "Don't touch me tonight, and don't come with me tomorrow. I'll go alone." No emotion, no softness, just a door closing somewhere I couldn't see. For a moment, 100 possible questions rose in my throat. Most of them useless, all of them too late. So I swallowed them. "Okay," I said, one word, calm, neutral, adult. She nodded slightly and went back to packing, like nothing important had happened. That night we lay on opposite edges of the bed, careful not to cross invisible borders. At one point her phone glowed faintly under the blanket. Dimmed, hidden, alive. "Don't touch me tonight." I stared into the darkness and felt myself already hating this phone, or rather, what was in it. Morning arrived quietly. She was already in the shower when I walked into the kitchen and started the coffee. Water running behind a closed door, soft light through the window, ordinary sounds pretending this was an ordinary day. Then a small notification chimed. Her laptop sat open on the counter, email visible without effort. I didn't move at first. Didn't need to. The subject line was enough. "Your tickets are confirmed." Tickets, plural. Something inside me went completely still. I stepped closer, slow enough that even my shadow felt careful. The message was already open. 2 passengers. The first name was hers. The second name, Caleb. My best friend's name, sitting there in clean black letters like it had every right to exist beside hers. I read it once, then again. And in that silent kitchen, with coffee cooling in my hand and water still running in the bathroom, the last few months finally rearranged themselves into the truth they had been spelling all along. No explosion, no dramatic collapse, just clarity, cold and precise as glass. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the shower, looking at the screen, feeling the strange calm that comes when confusion finally dies. And right then, before she even stepped out of the bathroom, I understood one simple thing. I wasn't going to ask questions. Not yet. Because questions give liars time to prepare answers. What I wanted was the whole story, and the ending that comes after it. I didn't move right away. That's the weird thing about moments like this. Your body keeps acting normal for a few seconds, like it's waiting for your brain to come back with a better explanation. Something softer. Something that doesn't require you to rearrange your entire life in your head. But no alternative explanation arrived, so I did the only thing that made sense. I became calm on purpose. I closed the laptop gently, not because I respected her privacy, but because I respected evidence. Slamming things is what teenagers do. Adults keep the screen intact and the fingerprints off. The shower stopped a few seconds later. Water cut off. A faint squeak of the bathroom door opening. I stepped away from the counter and picked up my coffee like I was just a man enjoying his morning. I even took a sip. It tasted the same as always, bitter, hot, and slightly judgmental. She walked into the kitchen in a robe, hair wet, face fresh, like she'd washed off not only sleep, but also the concept of guilt. "Morning," she said, reaching for a mug. "Morning," I replied. My voice didn't crack. My face didn't betray me. I didn't do the thing people expect in movies. The slow head turn, the narrowing eyes, the dramatic pause. Instead, I watched her like a scientist watches a creature he used to keep as a pet and has now realized might bite. She poured coffee, added sugar, stirred. Her hands were steady. No rush. No nervous glance toward the laptop. That told me something useful. Either she truly forgot the email was there, or she trusted me so much she didn't think I'd dare look. That kind of trust is adorable, right up until it gets you divorced. She leaned against the counter and took a sip. "I'll head out soon," she said. "Train's early." I nodded once. "Okay." I took another sip, slow and calm, as if this was any other morning, as if I wasn't holding the knowledge that my life had just been professionally sabotaged. "You're not coming with me," she added, like she was reading a reminder off an internal checklist. "I remember," I said. "You were very clear." She looked at me more closely now, like my calm was suspicious, like she'd expected pain, anger, maybe a small argument she could win and use to justify something later. But I wasn't giving her that. "You sure you're okay?" she asked, and the way she said it was almost funny, like I might be the unstable one for not asking questions. I gave her a small smile, not warm, just polite. "I'm fine," I said. "Have a good trip." Her eyes narrowed just a fraction. She didn't like that. People don't like when the person they're hurting refuses to perform. She turned away, walked into the bedroom, and came back with her suitcase. The wheels tapped lightly on the floor. "I'll text when I arrive," she said. "Sure." And then she went off to finish getting ready. A few minutes passed in that strange, careful silence that had become normal for us. When she came back, she was already dressed for the trip. Hair dry, coat on, the quiet efficiency of someone who had packed not just a suitcase, but a decision. This was the moment where, in a normal marriage, there's a kiss, a soft joke, a little tenderness to make the leaving less sharp. Instead, she just stood there, holding the handle of her suitcase like it was a business deal. "Bye," she said. "Travel safe," I replied. I walked her to the door anyway, not as an escort, but as a quiet confirmation of how far we'd fallen. I opened it for her. Cold air slipped into the hallway. She stepped out, didn't turn back. The door clicked shut, and the house went silent. Not the confused silence from before. This was different. This was the silence after a verdict. I stood there for a second, staring at the door like it might swing open and reveal the punchline. It didn't. I went back to the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and scrolled to a name that had always meant comfort. Caleb. Familiar. Safe. Now it looked like a loaded gun sitting politely inside a contact list. My thumb hovered. I didn't feel shaky. I didn't feel frantic. I felt organized. I typed a message that looked harmless enough to pass a lie detector in casual conversation. "Erin just left for her trip. Beer tonight?" I read it once. Neutral tone. Friendly. Nothing sharp. Then I hit send. The message flew off into the world. I set the phone down and waited, leaning back in the chair like this was an experiment and I was just observing results. 30 seconds. 1 minute. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. The house acted like nothing had happened, because houses don't care. They just hold memories like dust. Then my phone buzzed. I picked it up. "Can't tonight. Busy. Rain check." Short. Fast. Clean. The kind of reply you send when you're already in motion, already committed, already rehearsed. I let out a quiet breath that almost became a laugh. "Busy," I said to myself. "Right." The funniest part was how normal it looked on the surface. How easy it would be for a naive man to accept. "Oh, okay, he's busy. Nothing weird." But I wasn't naive. I was done being the guy who takes vague answers as truth. I grabbed my keys from the counter, not in a rage, not shaking, not dramatic, just calm. Because if you already know the truth, you don't run toward it. You walk. I stepped outside, got into my car, and started driving toward the station. Not to catch her, not to stop her, just to see. Because I didn't need comfort. I needed confirmation. And confirmation is the one thing liars can't talk their way out of. I didn't drive fast. Not because I was calm, because part of me still hoped, stupidly, irrationally, that I was wrong, that there would be some explanation waiting at the station that didn't make me look like the last idiot in the room. Traffic moved the way it always does when your life is quietly falling apart, slow enough to hurt, normal enough to feel insulting. People crossed streets. Someone laughed into a phone. A delivery truck blocked a lane like nothing in the world mattered more than packages arriving on time. Meanwhile, I was driving toward proof that my marriage had been lying to my face for months. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, not shaking, just locked. Like if I loosened my grip, something inside me would spill out and I wouldn't be able to put it back. I parked across from the station, not hiding. I just didn't trust myself to stand too close without doing something loud and irreversible. For a moment, I sat there breathing too slowly, like the air had turned heavy. "Okay," I muttered. "Let's see it." People moved in and out of the doors carrying suitcases and coffees and completely ordinary lives. Couples leaned into each other. Someone kissed goodbye. Someone argued softly and then laughed. Normal morning scenes, the kind I thought I still belonged to yesterday. Then she appeared. Erin walked toward the entrance with that same composed, efficient calm she'd worn in the kitchen. Coat buttoned, suitcase rolling smoothly behind her. No hesitation, no guilt, no sign that anything about this morning was wrong. She looked peaceful. That part hurt more than anything, because peaceful means practice. Peaceful means this isn't new. She stopped near the doors and checked her phone. Alone? For a few seconds, my chest tightened with something dangerously close to hope. Maybe he wouldn't come. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe this was still salvageable in some pathetic, humiliating way. Then he walked into frame. Caleb. No secrecy. No tension. Just walking up to my wife like that space beside her already belonged to him. Something hot and sharp went through my chest so fast it almost knocked the air out of me. Anger. He stood close to her, too close for coincidence, too natural for something that just started. He said something I couldn't hear. She smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. And that was the moment it stopped being abstract, stopped being a theory, stopped being something I could explain away if I tried hard enough. I felt my jaw tighten so hard it hurt. "Wow," I whispered to no one. "That's really how we're doing this?" They didn't look around, didn't act nervous, didn't behave like people doing something wrong. They behaved like people already sure of each other. That realization landed deeper than the anger, because it meant this wasn't a mistake, wasn't a single bad decision, wasn't something that happened once and filled them with guilt. This was time, planning, lies told calmly across my own dinner table. Caleb reached for her suitcase handle like it was the most natural thing in the world. She let him. No hesitation, no polite protest, nothing, just trust. I actually felt something twist in my stomach at that. Sharp, ugly, humiliating. Not just losing her, losing him too. Months of memories flashed through my head in broken pieces, laughing over beers, helping each other move apartments, standing at my wedding like loyalty meant something permanent. "Unbelievable," I muttered. My hands were shaking now, slightly, enough to notice. For one dangerous second, I pictured getting out of the car, walking straight across the street, calling his name, watching their faces when they realized I'd seen everything. The scene played out perfectly in my head. Shock, excuses, maybe even guilt. It would have felt good for about 10 seconds. And then what? Public yelling, strangers staring, me looking like a man begging for dignity in front of people who already stole it. No. I swallowed the anger slowly, like something bitter that refused to go down. "Not here," I said under my breath. "You don't give them a show." They walked inside together without looking back, doors closing behind them as if the world itself was helping keep their secret neat and quiet. And suddenly the anger drained out, leaving something heavier. Disappointment, deep, exhausted, final. I leaned back in the seat and stared at the station doors long after they were gone. I kept waiting to feel something dramatic, rage, heartbreak, the urge to break something. Instead, I felt tired. Tired of lies I didn't notice. Tired of trusting people who made it look easy. Tired of being the last one to understand my own life. I started the engine, my hands still a little unsteady on the wheel. There was nothing left to confirm, only something left to decide. And one thing became clear as I pulled away from the curb. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had already left. And I definitely wasn't going to beg a friend who chose betrayal over loyalty. Just an ending coming. One calm step at a time. I didn't remember the drive home. I must have followed the same streets, stopped at the same lights, turned the same corners I always did, but none of it stayed in my head. It was like my body handled the logistics while my mind sat somewhere else, replaying the image of them standing together outside the station. Her smile, his hand on the suitcase, how natural it looked. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the anger had changed shape. It wasn't sharp anymore. Sharp anger burns fast. This was slower, heavier, the kind that settles in your ribs and just stays. I sat in the car for a full minute after turning off the engine. The house looked exactly the same. Same windows, same door, same quiet little illusion of safety. It's strange how betrayal doesn't change the scenery, only the meaning of it. All right, I said quietly to myself. Now we find out how long. I went inside and closed the door behind me with more care than usual, like the sound might break something already fragile. The silence inside felt different now. Not empty, exposed. Every room suddenly looked like a place where lies had been spoken casually. The couch where we watched movies. The kitchen where we ate dinners that apparently came with secret subtext. The hallway where she kissed me goodbye on mornings that now felt staged. I walked slowly to the kitchen table and sat down. For a moment, I just stared at the surface of the wood, following tiny scratches I'd never noticed before. It gave my hand something to do besides shake. Okay, I said again, quieter this time. Facts. Emotion had already had its moment in the parking lot. Now it was time for something else. I opened my laptop. I logged into the shared email account we used for bills, bookings, all the boring adult logistics of a life that now felt suspiciously well organized. Search bar, one word, tickets. Results appeared instantly. Too many. My stomach tightened. The most recent one was the train I'd already seen. Below it, another confirmation. Different date. 2 months ago. 2 passengers. Her name and his. I felt the air leave my lungs slowly, like someone had pressed a hand against my chest and just held it there. 2 months, I whispered. I kept scrolling. Another trip. 3 months ago. Same pattern. Different city. Same 2 names. My jaw tightened so hard it started to ache. Wow, I muttered. You really planned this. Each email felt less like new information and more like a timeline assembling itself piece by piece. Calm, methodical, undeniable. 4 months, maybe more. All those late meetings, all those work emergencies, all the nights she was too tired to talk. Not random, not stress, schedule. I leaned back in the chair and covered my mouth with my hand, not because I was crying, but because something between a laugh and a curse was trying to get out, and I wasn't ready to hear which one it would be. I lowered my hand slowly and looked back at the screen. There it was. Months of proof. Not suspicion anymore. History. And the strangest feeling crept in under the anger. Not shock, not even pain. Clarity. Cold, unwelcome, undeniable clarity. Because once you see the full pattern, something inside you stops arguing with reality. Stops hoping, stops negotiating, it just accepts. I closed the laptop halfway and stared at the dim reflection of my own face in the darkening screen. For a long moment, I sat there in the quiet house, surrounded by furniture that suddenly felt like props from someone else's story. Then a new thought appeared. Calm, practical, almost disturbingly clear. If this has been going on for months, they think I know nothing. And if they think that, then I have time. Real time. The kind you don't get when you explode too early and ruin your own exit. My breathing slowed. The anger didn't disappear. It just moved aside, making space for something colder. Control. I opened the laptop again, this time not to look for pain, but to look for information. Dates, cities, payments, anything useful. Because if my marriage had been quietly ending behind my back, then my next move needed to be just as quiet. No scenes, no shouting, no dramatic speeches that change nothing, just preparation, careful, patient, final. And sitting there in that silent kitchen, surrounded by proof of a life that no longer existed, I understood something with absolute certainty. They had been planning their future. Now it was time to plan mine. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying timestamps and email dates, like my brain had turned into an accountant with anger issues. By morning, I wasn't calmer. I was sharper. I made coffee, ate nothing, and opened my laptop again. I didn't search for pain this time. I built a timeline, dates of trips, cities, purchase confirmations, seat numbers. The recurring pattern of two names traveling together like it was the most normal thing in the world. Then I checked our bank account. Not because I wanted to catch her spending, because I wanted to know what else they'd touched. There were expenses that looked innocent. Hotels labeled as conference, train tickets, occasional restaurant bills that didn't match anything she'd told me. Nothing illegal, just dishonest. I saved PDFs, printed what I could. Around noon, I called a lawyer. When the receptionist asked what it was about, I said, "Marriage situation. I need advice." She gave me an appointment for the next day. I didn't tell anyone else. Not my family. Not mutual friends. Definitely not Caleb's. The last thing I needed was my own life turning into group chat entertainment. That afternoon, I practiced something that felt disgusting but necessary. Acting normal. I cleaned the kitchen, answered a couple work emails, even went to the gym, because apparently I'm the type of man who responds to betrayal by improving his biceps like revenge comes in sets of 10. While running on the treadmill, I kept thinking the same thing. They've been doing this for months. They think I'm blind. They think I'm weak. I wasn't going to prove them right by exploding. I was going to end it in a way they couldn't twist into a story where I was the villain. That night, Aaron texted once. Arrived. Long day. Going to sleep. That was it. No photo, no details, no miss you. Just a corporate status update. I stared at the message for a few seconds, feeling that familiar heat rise in my chest. Then I typed back, "Okay. Rest." 2 words. Cold. Clean. Perfectly polite. If she felt anything reading it, she didn't show it. Over the next 2 days, I worked quietly. I checked old dates against Caleb's availability, the way a man checks weather patterns before a storm. I scrolled through our messages, me inviting him out, him being busy, me suggesting a weekend hang, him out of town. The lies weren't even creative, they were lazy. He'd been busy on every single trip date, every single one. At one point, I actually laughed out loud, alone in my living room. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. 2 people I trusted with my life couldn't even be bothered to build better alibis. By the time my lawyer appointment came, I had a neat stack of evidence and a head full of unpleasant clarity. The lawyer's office smelled like coffee and paper and decisions. She listened while I spoke, calm voice, tight jaw. I showed her the folder, the timeline, the proof that this wasn't a one-time mistake, but a pattern. She didn't gasp. Didn't judge, just nodded the way professionals do when they've heard every version of betrayal humanity can invent. "Do you have shared accounts?" she asked. "Yes." "Any property together?" "Yes." "Kids?" "No." Thank God. That would have turned this from betrayal into lifelong imprisonment. She laid out options, steps, the boring mechanics of leaving. And somehow, Those boring mechanics made me feel better than any emotional speech ever could. Before I left, she said, "Don't confront them until you're ready. People get unpredictable." I almost smiled. "Trust me," I said. "I'm not giving either of them the satisfaction." On the way home, I stopped at a print shop, printed everything: tickets, emails, messages, dates lined up in a way that looked like a crime documentary. I put them into a plain folder and left it in a drawer. When she came back, I needed her to walk into my timing, not hers. That night, Erin texted again, "Train tomorrow morning, should be home by afternoon." So casual, like she was coming back from a dentist appointment. I replied, "Okay," short, neutral, nothing to detect. And then I sat in the dark living room and realized something that made my stomach twist again. The hardest part wasn't going to be the reveal. It was going to be watching her walk back into my house, smiling, acting like nothing happened, and not letting my anger drive the car. Because I could still feel it. The anger, the disappointment, the humiliation. But now I had something better than anger. I had the truth, and a plan. All that was left was the moment she stepped through the door. The next afternoon, the house felt too quiet. Not peaceful, just waiting. I'd already put everything in place. Documents printed, accounts checked, lawyer consulted, folder hidden where only I knew to look. There was nothing left to prepare, only the moment. When the sound of the key finally turned in the lock. The door opened. Erin walked in like she always did after a short trip. Tired face, soft exhale, that small automatic smile people wear when they expect to be welcomed home. "Hey," she said, setting her bag down. "Hey," I answered. My voice sounded normal. I hated how easy that was. She stepped closer, looking around the living room like she was checking whether anything had changed. "How are things here?" she asked. "Quiet," I said. "Work, gym, same stuff." She nodded, relieved by the simplicity. No suspicion, no tension she could point to. "Trip was exhausting," she said, slipping off her coat. "Meetings all day." The word landed in my head like something rotten wrapped in polite packaging. For a second, anger flashed up. Sharp, immediate, almost physical. I pictured the station again. Her smile. His hand on the suitcase. My jaw tightened, but I didn't interrupt. Didn't challenge her. Didn't give her the scene she might have prepared for. "Sounds rough," I said quietly. She studied my face for a moment, like she was checking whether I believed her. Then she relaxed. That hurt more than the lie itself, because it meant she was comfortable. Comfortable lying. Comfortable coming home. Comfortable standing in front of me after everything. She walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, moved around the space like nothing in this house had changed meaning. She poured herself water and leaned against the counter. "I missed my own bed," she said with a tired smile. For a split second, something inside me twisted. Old reflex, old love, old habit of wanting to believe her. Then the image of the tickets cut through it cleanly. The feeling disappeared. "Erin," I said. She looked up immediately, sensing the difference in my voice. "Yeah?" I held her gaze for a second, long enough that she stopped moving completely. Then I walked to the drawer, opened it, and took out the folder. Plain. Ordinary. Heavy in a way paper shouldn't be. I set it on the table between us. She frowned slightly. "What's that?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted the silence to do its job. Slowly, I opened the folder and turned it toward her. Printed tickets, dates, 2 names side by side, over and over again. Her eyes dropped to the page. For a moment, nothing happened. No reaction, no sound. Just the quiet second where a lie realizes it has nowhere left to stand. I watched her face carefully. The tiny shift in color, the way her lips parted. The exact instant she understood this wasn't suspicion. This was proof. She looked up at me, searching for something. Anger, maybe, or weakness she could still use. I gave her neither, only calm. "You could have just left," I said quietly. No lies, no pretending, just honesty. My voice didn't rise, didn't break, and somehow that made the words land harder than shouting ever could. Silence filled the room, thick and irreversible. Everything that mattered had already been said. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes moved across the pages again, slower this time, like the numbers might rearrange themselves into something less final if she looked long enough. They didn't. "What is this?" she asked quietly, though we both knew the question wasn't real. "Your trips," I said. "Your meetings. Your honesty." She finally looked up at me, and for the first time since she walked in, there was something real in her face. Not guilt, not even shame. Fear. "Are you leaving?" she asked. I almost smiled at that. Like the important part of this situation was my movement, not her betrayal. "Yeah," I said calmly. "I am." I closed the folder, slid it back toward myself, then turned and walked down the hallway. She didn't follow at first. I could hear her breathing behind me, shallow, uneven, like reality had finally caught up, and she didn't like the pace. In the bedroom, 2 suitcases were already standing by the wall, packed the night before. She stepped into the doorway but didn't come closer, like there was an invisible line on the floor. She suddenly understood she couldn't cross anymore. "Please," she said softly. "Don't do this like this. We can talk." I looked at her then. At the same face I had trusted, laughed with, built a life around, and all I felt was distance. "You had months to talk," I said. "You used them to travel." Her eyes filled, but the tears came too late to matter. I picked up the suitcases and walked past her. She didn't touch me, didn't try to stop me. Maybe she finally understood that some doors close quietly and never open again. At the entrance, I set the suitcases down for a second, grabbed my keys, then looked back once more. Not at the house, at her, standing in the hallway, smaller somehow, like the truth had taken space away from her. "I meant what I said," I told her quietly. "You could have just left. That would have hurt less." She started to cry then. Real tears this time. I opened the door, picked up the suitcases, and walked out without another word. The new apartment smelled like fresh paint and someone else's forgotten future. Empty walls, bare floor. One window with too much light. I set the suitcases down in the middle of the room and stood there for a long moment, listening to the silence. No lies in this silence. No second life happening somewhere I couldn't see. Just quiet. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Her name on the screen. I didn't open it. Instead, I scrolled to another name, Caleb. For a second, I just stared at it, feeling that old anger move under the surface. Slower now, colder. Then I opened the gallery, selected the photos of the tickets, the timelines, the proof laid out clean and undeniable. Attached them, typed one message, short, clear, final. You could have chosen anyone in the world, and you chose your best friend's wife. That's just being a pathetic excuse for a man. I watched the screen for a second, then I hit send. The message disappeared into the same silence where our friendship had already gone. I put the phone down on the floor beside me and sat against the wall, legs stretched out, staring at nothing in particular. For the first time in months, my chest felt light, and I realized something simple, something that felt like the only truth left worth keeping. I thought I lost my wife, but what I really lost was a lie. And the truth, no matter how cold, is always worth more. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.